A new Nintendo Switch revision is coming. No revelation here. It's a question of when rather than if. As great as the console is, there are newer and better components on the market today, and with the hindsight of its R&D department, it could now be even better. The Wall Street Journal Japan reports a revision is planned for latter half 2019, based on supplier info. And if we look at Nintendo's history in the handheld market, that's right on schedule too. It's coming up to 2 years since Switch launched in March 2017. In that same timeframe, the Nintendo DS got a light model, a major overhaul in usability with a clamshell redesign and a brighter screen, while 3DS received an enlarged XL version. So it's about time Switch further refined a winning formula, but what form could that take? Now, I absolutely love the Switch. Let me get that out of the way first, otherwise it'll sound like I'm ripping it apart. This console hosts the best games I've played in recent memory. Mario Kart 8 Deluxe is my favourite of the series, and Smash Bros. Ultimate is going to be on rotation for many years to come. Heck, of my top 7 games of 2018, Switch takes 3 spots. But the fact is, 2 years on from my original DF review, this console does need a fair reassessment. There are parts of its design which, even on unboxing it back then, weren't great, but were eclipsed by the brilliance of the concept as a whole. Now, before we start, let's touch on what we do know already. According to info unearthed by the hacking community, the current Switch's firmware contains support for a new SoC profile, dubbed Mariko. This is our first sign of a chipset revision coming to Switch. Whether it's a discrete under-the-hood change or part of a whole new Switch model, we'll have to see. What we can deduce is that it follows a line of NVIDIA parts using codenames based on, would you believe it, Marvel characters. Going from Logan on the TK1 chipset to Arista on the Tegra X1, Mariko relates to NVIDIA's T214 chipset, a fork of the Tegra X1 that Switch already uses. Improved frame rates or graphics are possible, but my guess is a stopgap before a more radical Switch upgrade comes a few years down the line. With that said then, and assuming a similar power profile, here are 6 ways Switch can, and in some cases must, improve in the event of an updated hardware revision. So, number 1. 4K output support. Whether or not that T214 chipset turns out to be a big GPU improvement, there's one thing Switch must do next: allow for 4K scaling to Ultra HD TVs. What's clear right now is, with the rise in popularity of 4K sets, it makes no sense to release another Switch that can only output 1080p at best. The market is only moving in one direction, and sadly, right now Switch is mismatched with what TVs are aiming for. This isn't likely to be solved by firmware either. It demands a change to the core hardware to turn that around. Now let's be clear, obviously I don't expect native 4K rendering in titles or anything like that. Rather, it's simply the option to let Switch scale games internally to a resolution a 4K TV can display 1:1. In other words, no scaling involved on the TV side. Currently, certain Switch games end up being scaled twice before appearing on your screen, resulting in a worse image than intended. 900p games like Breath of the Wild, for example, get scaled to 1080p on Switch itself and then scaled by the TV to 4K, hardly ideal. The result is less clean. It's imprecise and could be streamlined if all the scaling is done on the Switch itself. What needs to happen hardware-wise then? Well, mainly it relates to its USB-C 3.1 port. The Tegra X1 chip can in theory process at 4K, but the port at the bottom needs to be able to output the result. Let's break this down. We have HDMI 1.4 level bandwidth on Switch right now, 10 gigabits per second. That's perfect for 1080p, and is actually enough already for 4K output. The catch there? Well, it can only spit it out at 30 frames per second. For anything higher, the bandwidth just isn't there. Fortunately, there is a solution today. To make 4K 60 happen, HDMI 2.0 operates at a max of 18 gigabits per second. We're falling short of Switch's 10, but a move to USB-C version 3.2, a new spec introduced in late 2017, would turn Switch's fortunes around. This would let the next Switch output at 20 gigabits per second max, more than enough to get the job done. The technology is there. Plus, using the same USB-C interface would mean it slots into the same dock and keep compatibility with all existing Switch peripherals. The only unknown is the bandwidth Nintendo needs to allocate for peripherals as well, which all route through that same port. One way or another though, 4K output support really is a must, and Nintendo has a set of options to make that happen. Number 2. Wi-Fi quality. Okay, this is a quick one, but a huge point. Switch's wireless connection quality to every router I've tried is really poor. It results in games lagging more often than a wired connection, notably in Smash Bros. Ultimate, which already has issues in the best case. Tellingly, even the developer recommends you fork out for a USB LAN adapter. That's all well and good, but obviously not much use if you're playing handheld. The bottom line, the Wi-Fi module inside the Switch is not good enough for the job. It struggles and doesn't give you a great way to use Nintendo's paid-for online service. Even in direct console-to-console connections, avoiding a router entirely, that Wi-Fi module has issues in Smash Bros., introducing lag for everyone. Now, download speeds are also an issue. Using a USB LAN adapter chops the ETA of a big game install down massively, sometimes by half. Even so, being forced to buy an adapter is simply not ideal. It's a must if you want to get any use out of Nintendo's online service, an extra expense. From everyone I've asked at Digital Foundry, this ranks up there as the most urgent issue to address in the next Switch revision. So number 3, the dock. This goes back to my original review. The Switch is the highest quality handheld Nintendo's ever made, and so it's strange that the dock it ships with has such an obvious flaw. It's a simple hard plastic block that's certainly functional. The trouble is, it fails to protect the Switch's display as you slide it down. You can be careful and avoid scratches by gently sliding it in and soften the impact with those plastic ridges. But still, it's a big oversight for something you're regularly encouraged to do. It needs softer insulation by default to prevent scuffing and scratching. Now, there are plenty of ways to modify the dock yourself with foam inserts, but should that really be down to us? In a new Switch package, Nintendo has an easy way to reduce this wear and tear. For now, there are workarounds like the external S-Fans adapter. This third-party adapter lets you plug the Switch in to get many of the same connections, plus HDMI out. No chance of scratching the screen this way. It's not elegant though, and you do have to be careful of the heat the console pushes out while connected. For all its faults, Nintendo's dock does at least leave it standing up, to let that top air vent breathe. As an aside, the functionality of the Switch dock could be improved in very small ways too. Going back to the Wi-Fi issue, maybe a new dock could simply add an Ethernet port at the back. It's an idea. Number 4, larger default storage. Switch has 32GB of onboard flash NAND memory. That's fine for a clutch of indie titles, but that 32GB is also taken up by system files, leaving only 18GB for users. As the default solution, that's really not enough. When games like Smash Bros. Ultimate come in at 14GB fully patched, it means you're constantly juggling between your favorites. Even a game like Doom demands almost 22GB, making it an unviable solution to go off hardware storage alone. Sure, SD cards and upgrades are relatively cheap these days. The data management system also works really well on Switch, but we should expect more out of the box. We see it all the time in new phone generations. High capacity options used as a selling point for iPhones. In fairness to Nintendo, the tradition is still to buy cartridges and avoid using storage for anything outside of updates or save game files. But the times are changing. And when you consider physical box games like LA Noire or Bayonetta 1 and 2 require an extra download to get at the full package, even that idea is falling by the wayside. And to go back to Doom again, buying a cartridge there demands a whopping 9GB download to access the multiplayer mode. The future is digital, and the next Switch needs the hardware to back that up. Number 5, the Kickstand. One of Switch's defining features, the Kickstand lets us play anywhere with friends on the smaller screen. It's a great option, but it just isn't robust as it needs to be. It puts all of its weight on a thin plastic strip and a small spring. And even in the office here, we've had one break on us. Part of the trouble is there's only one point to balance it on as well. Now for games like Mario Kart or Puyo Puyo Tetris, it's an absolute gift of a feature to take on planes or in pubs. But you do have to be wary of the surface you're putting it on. Nintendo could look at the options out there. The Surface Pro, for example, has an excellent firm kickstand that pulls out and fixes in set increments. This gives us plenty of angles to work from, and the fixing feels sturdy. Playing anywhere has been a major selling point of the Switch. Now it's been out for almost 2 years, I'd hope we're approaching an upgrade. Number 6 goes to the Switch's screen size. Now the Switch's screen is by no means tiny for a gaming handheld. At 6 inches, it's Nintendo's most luxuriously proportioned console to date in fact, and it pays off for playing on the go. And yet Nintendo can go even further in the next model. Switch as it is has a black bezel flanking that lovely screen, measuring at about a centimeter all the way around. It doesn't notice while playing, but in theory, it could stretch out to the screen size to fill the space. In other words, we get a larger panel without even changing the dimensions of the Switch itself. Crucially, it means Joy-Con compatibility stays, since the metal railings at the sides are built to the same spec. For games like New Super Mario Bros. U Deluxe or Smash Ultimate, a screen expansion would be great, even if it's only by that extra ½ inch. Both games are a real test on your eyesight when the action kicks off with 4 players, and in an era of edge-to-edge smartphones, it's not a wild leap. We've come a long way from the Wii U, which surrounded that 6-inch screen with a sea of glossy plastic. Not only would a slightly larger display mark the next Switch as an upgrade, it also followed in the steps of predecessors like the 3DS XL. Now, that does not mean a higher resolution panel. 720p is really nicely suited for the console. Given the horsepower and wattage Switch has to work with on the go, most games can hit 1280x720 with little upscaling. There are exceptions, but it feels balanced with the internal spec. Cast your minds back to titles like Uncharted Golden Abyss on Vita, and there we saw it forced to render at 75% scale on its 544p screen, leading to upscaling. Barring a huge GPU upgrade for the new Switch then, it's better to leave that resolution in place and avoid moving the goalposts for developers. For the future, who knows where Nintendo could take it, but for now, I think just a larger panel will do. That's it then. So let's review. Between 4K output support, better Wi-Fi, an improved dock, sturdier kickstand, higher internal storage, and a slightly larger screen, many of these are realistic changes. I'd be impressed if we got them all in one Switch XL package, but none of them are too audacious. In fact, many of them simply adjust the Switch concept we have already, effective changes that make it easier to use and bring out the brilliance of Nintendo's core idea. As for frame rate and resolution improvements, yes, we'd love them. Of course, that's our remit at DF, and we'll be all over the test if GPU or CPU clocks are pushed up, as we saw in the DSi. It's more in theory at this stage though. So little is really known about the T214 chip, and if that's indeed the bedrock of a fully revised system. Needless to say, plenty of games use dynamic res scaling, and a boost in GPU spec would mean, as one example, Breath of the Wild would always run at the maximum 900p docked. Plus, where it drops, frame rates would lock to 30 FPS too. There's plenty to play for there, but we'll have to see what unfolds over the coming months. Nintendo plans to support the Switch for many years to come, and whatever happens this year is unlikely to be the last step. Those are my 6 choices for an upgrade, but there's plenty of others. Battery life is a reasonable one. We've seen games like Diablo 3 played on taxing Nephilim Rift areas absolutely chew through the battery while on the move. On the other hand, Joy-Con build quality has discreetly improved since we first reviewed our Switch. Back in 2017, our launch Joy-Cons missed inputs and lost track of the analog sticks. On this newer Japan model, bought in mid-2018, that connectivity issue is largely gone. Going to the calibration screen, the ones we have now don't miss a beat. But still, I'd be interested in your thoughts. What would you like to see from a Switch upgrade? Let me know in the comments below. But in the meantime, if you do enjoy our coverage of Switch and want to see more, do let me know by liking or subscribing to the channel. Also, it's worth hitting the bell for notifications as any new video lands. But until next time, thanks for watching.